Why did the SEAL commander whisper, "It's over," when the night was already full of silence? Snow fell like static across the Afghan mountains, drifting, endless, a quiet shroud over men who were not meant to die here but felt the weight of death closing in. 8 Navy SEALs pressed their backs against frozen rock, ammunition running dangerously low, breath crystallizing into the thin, merciless air. Shadows moved through the canyon, enemy voices carried by the wind. 3 sides closing in. The commander's lips barely moved as he whispered, "This is it. It's over." And then it came, crack. A single rifle shot so sharp, so precise, it sliced through the mountain air like fate itself had chosen a side. One fighter dropped instantly, his blood painting the snow in crimson streaks. Then another. Each shot impossibly exact, each kill too distant to be chance. The SEALs froze in stunned disbelief, scanning the ridge above them. Who was pulling that trigger? Who had appeared at the exact moment when all hope was lost? She adjusted the straps of her medical pack, checked her watch, 3:47 hours. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the medic no one wanted, the woman too fragile, too quiet, too ordinary. To the men, she was just another piece of equipment they were forced to drag along. Necessary but inconvenient, useful but not tactical. "Why'd they saddle us with her on this op?" one whispered earlier, his voice full of disdain. She had heard him. She heard everything. She always did. But she had learned long ago. In a man's world, survival meant being indispensable through competence, not confrontation. When they stopped for water, she gave out protein bars. When the cold bit through skin, she passed hand warmers. When a strap slipped, her small hands tightened the buckles. She was a shadow in the group, blending, quiet, seemingly weak. Yet there were moments, brief, fleeting, when her mask slipped, when her hands checked her rifle with movements too smooth, too practiced. Moments when her eyes scanned sight lines, mapping kill zones without even realizing she was doing it. If any of them had been watching closely, they might have noticed. One man did. Colonel Sullivan, a ghost of a soldier himself, older than the rest, carrying decades of clandestine wars in his eyes. He had seen that kind of precision before. Not in a doctor, not in a medic. But the SEAL commander didn't ask questions, not yet. He only told her what mattered. Their mission was simple: extraction. Rescue a nuclear physicist taken hostage in Kabul. Get him out. Survive. And she nodded, quiet, unassuming. She was here to heal, not to fight, or so they believed. Bosnia, 1999. The memory haunted her like a wound that never closed. She had lain behind a sniper rifle for 11 hours, muscles cramping, body screaming, but her mind locked into a single magnified frame. A black Mercedes pulling into a villa courtyard. A man stepping out, Victor Dragovich. Her finger tightening on the trigger. One shot meant to end it all. But the man had moved. The bullet struck his shoulder, not his heart. She had missed. And because of that single miss, her team had died in an ambush she couldn't stop. That night, Phantom Echo, the sniper who never missed, died with them. Only Sarah Mitchell had come home, and in the smoke, in the fire, she had seen Dragovich's smile. He had lived. He would remember. Now, years later in these mountains, something inside her stirred again. The ghost of Bosnia hadn't died. It had been waiting. She carried her medic's kit, yes, but beneath its false bottom lay a disassembled sniper rifle, polished, oiled, ready. She told herself it was just insurance, a relic of who she had been. But deep down, she knew the truth. Some skills never truly fade. They wait, patient, silent, like snow. The SEALs didn't know any of this. They looked at her and saw fragility. One even smirked when she slipped on the ice. "She'll freeze up in combat," he muttered. She said nothing, because that's what they expected. Silence. But silence could be a weapon, too. Later, when Colonel Sullivan slipped a photo across a desk, Dragovich, alive, entering a compound only days ago, her blood had gone cold. She whispered his name without meaning to. Sullivan's eyes caught hers. "You see now," he said. "This mission isn't just an extraction. It's a trap. And you are the only one who might recognize his tactics before it's too late." She had told him she wasn't that person anymore, that she was a doctor now, that she had sworn never to pick up a sniper rifle again. But Sullivan only smiled, slow and tired. "And yet you packed one." That night alone, she had assembled the weapon in her quarters. Her fingers remembered every curve, every motion. It was muscle memory, an old rhythm in her bones. She looked through the scope at a wall, and the world narrowed into sharp lines, crosshairs, and distance. She had told herself she was a healer now, but the rifle fit her hands like it had been waiting all along. The next morning, the SEAL commander tested her at the range. The men watched with smirks, betting money she couldn't hit a target. She raised the rifle, fired 3 rounds, all dead center, at 100 meters, at 300, at 600, impossible shots. Their laughter died in the snow. One even whispered that wasn't a doctor move. She said only 6 words in reply: "My father taught me to shoot," and nothing more. The truth lay beneath the surface, heavy as the medallion she carried, her father's, given before his last mission. He had told her once, "Accuracy is a gift, but wisdom is knowing when to use it." She wondered now if wisdom was abandoning it altogether. And yet, here she was, preparing for insertion with a SEAL team that didn't want her, into mountains that had already claimed too much of her past. The helicopter rotors cut the night as they lifted off. 8 men, 1 medic, and 1 secret she couldn't bury any longer. She sat in silence, eyes closed, hearing the pilot's countdown. 10 minutes to drop zone. 6 hours to the target. She touched the envelope Sullivan had slipped into her pocket. 3 words written inside: "Trust your instincts." Outside, the mountains loomed like teeth in the dark. Below, enemy fighters moved in patterns too perfect, too rehearsed. And somewhere in those shadows, a man she had missed once was waiting still. A man who knew she would come. She told herself she was Sarah Mitchell, doctor, healer. But deep down, she felt phantom echoes stirring, pulling her back to the ridge, back to the scope, back to the shot she had failed to take. The SEAL commander looked at her then, his voice steady, controlled. "You stay in the center, you don't fall behind, and you don't compromise my men. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear," she said. But her mind whispered something else. This wasn't just a rescue. This was unfinished business. And in the silence between rotor blades, snow, and breath, the ghost rifle waited. Why did the air feel heavier with every step? 6 hours through the Afghan mountains and still no sign of the compound, only the sound of boots crunching against frozen earth and the steady pulse of breath turning white in the dark. The SEALs moved with practiced precision, 5 meters apart, rifles sweeping the ridgelines. Sarah Mitchell stayed in the center, as ordered, the weight of her medical kit dragging on her shoulders. But it wasn't the kit that pressed her down. It was the rifle hidden inside. A ghost shadow waiting. The mountains here had no mercy. Jagged peaks cut at the sky like blades. The snow reflected starlight so brightly it hurt the eyes, yet the valleys between were pitch black, perfect ground for ambushes. Sarah saw it all with the eyes of someone who had spent too many years on the wrong side of scopes. She wanted to stay quiet, to remain the medic they thought she was, but old habits surfaced. She caught herself calculating ranges to potential sniper nests, tracking angles, even adjusting her stride to avoid skyline exposure. The youngest of the team, Cooper, noticed. He watched her with suspicion every time she moved. "Playing soldier," he muttered to Martinez when she offered to help redistribute load gear. "She'll fold the second rounds come down range." Sarah heard him. She always did. She said nothing, because silence was safer than defending herself. But her silence only made Cooper more certain. 4 hours into the climb, Commander Wilson called for a halt. The team dropped into a shallow ravine, sipping water, rubbing life back into their hands. Sarah moved between them quietly, checking faces for signs of frostbite, lungs for altitude sickness. It was routine, automatic. But when she reached Cooper, she saw him massaging his right knee, jaw clenched against pain. "Old injury?" she asked. He shook his head. "I'm good." She crouched, voice soft. "You're limping, let me see." He hesitated, then rolled up his pant leg, revealing a jagged scar across his kneecap. Shrapnel, years old but raw in the cold. Without hesitation, Sarah pulled a heat pack from her kit, snapped it, and pressed it into his hand. "Apply it directly. It'll ease the inflammation without compromising mobility. Cooper stared at her, caught between pride and gratitude. You really are a doctor, huh? His voice carried something strange, curiosity, almost respect. Then he added, quieter, though most docs I know don't shoot like you did back at the range. She didn't answer, because there wasn't an answer that wouldn't reveal too much. Wilson approached then, calling her aside. He studied her face in the dim light, his eyes sharp, unrelenting. That alternate route you suggested yesterday, he said. It's paying off. We avoided 2 likely ambush points already. Sarah nodded. It just seemed cleaner. Cleaner, Wilson repeated, his tone edged. That wasn't a guess. That was operator talk. She held his gaze. I've worked in conflict zones before, Commander. Wilson leaned closer. You've worked in them differently. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise. He didn't press further. He didn't need to. The suspicion was already alive between them, as sharp as the cold. Before she could respond, Martinez called from the ridge. Commander, you need to see this. They climbed to the vantage point. Through night vision goggles, Sarah saw the valley below, tracks carved deep into the snow. Heavy vehicles. Recent. More traffic than expected, Martinez said. Wilson studied the grooves. Reinforcements. Sarah spoke without thinking. Those aren't Taliban trucks. The wheelbase is too wide. The tread pattern, Russian BTR-80s, armored personnel carriers. Silence fell. Wilson lowered the goggles, turning to her slowly. And how exactly do you recognize Russian armored tracks on sight? She froze. A doctor wouldn't. A refugee worker might, but not like this. I worked with displaced families, she lied quickly. They describe the vehicles. You learn what to look for. Wilson's expression hardened. He didn't believe her, not fully, but he let it go, for now. Adjust our approach, he ordered. If they've got APCs, this isn't just Taliban. We'll expect heavier resistance. Sarah's pulse hammered. Russian equipment meant something worse. It meant planning, outside support. It meant Dragovich. They pushed on. The mountain path narrowed, forcing single file. Snow fell thicker now, muffling sound, cloaking them in silence. Each crunch of a boot echoed too loudly. Each shadow on the ridge felt alive. Sarah's thoughts spiraled. Bosnia, the villa, her team's screams as the ambush fell. The smile on Dragovich's face as he vanished into the smoke. She shook it off, forcing herself back to the present. But fear has memory, and hers was strong. Hours later, dawn bled faint light over the peaks. The compound came into view, a cluster of mud brick structures nestled in a valley. From this distance, it looked unassuming, ordinary, but through optics, Sarah saw the truth. 17 heat signatures, too many. Patrols moving in patterns too disciplined, too regular. Not Taliban, soldiers, professionals. Sir, she whispered to Wilson, showing him. These aren't insurgents. This is trained movement. Russian, maybe Spetsnaz-trained mercenaries. Wilson's jaw tightened. And you know that how, Doctor? She said nothing. She didn't have to. The evidence spoke for itself. He studied her, then made his call. Martinez, Cooper, establish overwatch. Jackson, Thompson, circle west. Mitchell with me. As the others moved, Wilson drew her aside again. Enough games. You've identified Russian vehicles, special forces tactics, alternate routes no intel officer briefed. Either you're the most observant medic in history or you're lying. Which is it? Sarah met his gaze, steady, calm. What matters right now is extracting Dr. Chen. My past is irrelevant to that mission. Not if it compromises my men. His voice hardened. Last chance, Mitchell. Who are you really? The silence stretched between them, heavy as the snow. Finally, she let out a slow breath. The man inside that compound is Viktor Dragovich, she said. I encountered him in Bosnia. The mission failed. My team was killed. He survived. Wilson's eyes narrowed. Understanding dawned. And now he's here, holding a nuclear physicist. Yes. He exhaled. So Sullivan knew. That's why he forced you on this team. We're not just rescuing Chen, we're bait. Before she could answer, Martinez's voice crackled over comms. "Commander, movement at the north perimeter, vehicles leaving the compound, 3 trucks, VIP escort." Wilson raised his binoculars. A convoy rolled out, headlights piercing the snow, moving with precision. "That's Chen," Wilson said. "They're moving him." Sarah shook her head. "It's too convenient, too clean, sir. This feels wrong. We don't have time for feelings. If that's Chen leaving, we can't afford to lose him." He signaled the team. "All units converge, prepare to intercept." Sarah's chest tightened. Bosnia, again, the perfect intelligence, the perfect window, the perfect ambush. She gripped her pack, her rifle inside, her pulse steady but heavy. Instinct screamed, but orders were orders, and instinct had failed her before. They moved quickly into position along the valley road. Jackson and Thompson readied anti-vehicle weapons. Martinez's team set suppressive positions. Wilson and Cooper prepared to breach the central SUV. Sarah stayed back, as told, the medic who would wait for casualties. Engines rumbled closer. Headlights broke through the storm. The convoy rolled into their kill zone. Wilson gave the order, "Execute." The night erupted, tires shredded, engines crippled, guards dropped in the snow. The ambush was flawless, almost too flawless. Sarah's eyes swept the ridgeline, and then she saw it, a glint of metal, a shadow of movement, high ground, sniper. "Ridgeline 2 o'clock, she shouted into comms. The shot cracked a second later. Martinez went down, blood soaking his shoulder. Then the valley exploded in gunfire, not from the convoy, but from the surrounding hills. Fighters emerging from hidden nests, disciplined, precise, herding them, cutting off every escape. "It's a trap," Wilson's voice roared through comms. "Fall back, fall back." Sarah's hands flew to her pack. In seconds, the M24 was assembled, her fingers moving with instinct she couldn't deny anymore. Through the scope, she found the sniper, squeezed. One figure tumbled, but for every one she dropped, 2 more emerged. And then she saw him. Tall, broad-shouldered, face obscured by a tactical mask, directing the ambush from the ridge. Even at this distance, she knew. Dragovich. She adjusted, centered crosshairs on his chest, breath steady. One shot, one chance to end it. Her finger tightened. "Man down," Cooper's panicked voice tore through comms. "Jackson's hit bad, we need immediate medical." Sarah froze, crosshairs steady, Dragovich in her sights. One squeeze and Bosnia would be avenged. One squeeze and the nightmare ended, but Jackson was bleeding out, and she was still a doctor. Her rifle trembled. The past fought with the present. Phantom Echo versus Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She cursed, lowered her scope, and ran. How much blood could one man lose in the snow before it swallowed him whole? Jackson gasped, chest heaving, crimson staining the ice black beneath him. Cooper's hands pressed hard against the wound, but panic edged his voice. "I can't stop it. Doc, do something." Sarah slid to her knees, her M24 slung across her back, medic's kit open before her. Training took over, cut away the vest, assess the wound, bullet through the lung, a sucking chest wound. Her fingers worked with practiced precision, occlusive dressing sealed tight, clotting agent applied, morphine injected. Jackson's eyes rolled back, then focused on her. She leaned close. "Stay with me, you're not dying here." Gunfire cracked above them, ricochets showering rock fragments. Cooper fired wildly from cover, his last magazine nearly spent. "We're surrounded." Sarah looked up, Wilson and the others pinned behind an embankment, Martinez clutching his wounded shoulder, the team split and bleeding. She had seconds to choose. Stay a doctor and lose the high ground, or become Echo again and give them a fighting chance. She ripped the rifle from her pack, snapped the bolt into place, and rolled to the edge of cover. Through her scope, the battlefield sharpened. Enemy muzzle flashes burst from the eastern ridge. A machine gun nest. 3 controlled breaths. 3 controlled shots. The nest went silent. But it wasn't enough. More shadows emerged, moving with discipline that screamed professional training. Not Taliban, not farmers with rifles. soldiers, Russian-trained, and leading them still half-hidden, still untouchable Dragovich. Wilson's voice cut through the chaos. "We're in a kill zone. They're herding us east." Sarah swung her scope toward the canyon Dragovich wanted them in. It was textbook, a choke point, a slaughter pen. Her stomach knotted. She had seen this play before. Bosnia. Her team funneled, cornered, eliminated. She fired again, dropped another hostile, but they kept coming, like ghosts from the snow. For every one she killed, two more filled the space. Cooper cursed beside her. "Doc, I'm empty." He yanked another mag from a dead fighter, slammed it into his rifle. His hands trembled. His eyes flicked to Sarah, and for the first time there was no disdain in them, only desperation. "What the hell are you, Mitchell?" She didn't answer. The only reply was the crack of her rifle. Wilson's voice barked in her earpiece. "We need a corridor for extraction. Can you clear us north?" Sarah scanned, found the ridge, calculated wind and distance instinctively. Her crosshairs aligned on a sniper covering their escape. She fired. The figure crumpled. Then another. And another. She carved open a path in blood and silence. "Move," Wilson shouted. The team dragged Martinez and Jackson, stumbling toward the northern ridge. Sarah covered every step, her body moving on memory, not thought. Phantom echo had returned, whether she admitted it or not. At the cave mouth they collapsed, bodies pressed against the rock. Cooper dropped Jackson as gently as possible, chest heaving. Wilson crouched beside Sarah, eyes burning. "You want to tell me what the hell that was? Because no medic I've ever met shoots like that." Sarah's pulse hammered. For a second she thought about lying, pretending, but the snow around them was soaked in proof. Her silence, her precision, her choices. There was no going back now. She met his gaze. "I was part of a unit once. Phantom, Bosnia, we were ghosts. My specialty was long-range elimination." Wilson's face hardened. He had heard whispers of that unit, though officially it didn't exist. "Sniper." She nodded once. "I was, not anymore." "Bullshit," he snapped, gesturing to the rifle. "You're still one." Her jaw clenched. "I chose medicine for a reason. I chose to save lives." "Then explain this." He pointed to Jackson, his blood slowing only because she had been both doctor and sniper in the same breath. Sarah looked down, fingers stained red. The contradiction tore at her. She wanted to say she was Echo anymore. But the truth whispered in the back of her mind, "You never stopped being Echo." The cave was cold, damp, but defensible. They dragged the wounded inside. Wilson ordered Cooper and Thompson to set perimeter. Sarah checked Martinez's shoulder, clean through, bleeding but survivable. Jackson was worse. His breathing shallow, pulse fatting. 12 hours, maybe less, without evac. Wilson leaned close, his voice lowered. "We're not just here for Chen, are we? This is bigger." Sarah hesitated. The words clung to her throat. Then she reached into her vest, pulled out Sullivan's drive, plugged it into her tablet. A video flickered alive. Sullivan's face, weathered, grave. His voice filled the cave. "Sarah, if you're watching this, things have gone wrong. Dragovich has acquired weapons-grade uranium. Chen isn't just a hostage, he's building a portable nuclear device. If completed, it will vanish into the black market. Your mission is to stop it at any cost." The video ended. Silence pressed heavy. Wilson's hand raked through his hair. "Jesus Christ." Sarah swallowed hard. "Chen is still in the compound. They staged the convoy to lure us, to bleed us, just like Bosnia." Wilson looked at her. "And Sullivan sent you because you've faced him before." Her voice cracked and failed. Wilson studied her a long moment, then he shook his head. "Not this time." Snow fell outside, soft, relentless. Dragovich's men shifted in the valley, regrouping, preparing. In the distance, Sarah swore she could feel his eyes on her, patient, smiling, waiting for the dance to begin again. Inside the cave, Jackson groaned, his blood staining her hands anew. Sarah pressed down, whispering to herself, "I'm a doctor. I'm not Echo anymore." But when she raised her eyes to the ridgeline, she knew the truth. Phantom Echo was awake, and the ghost rifle had already spoken. Why did the silence inside the cave feel louder than the gunfire outside? The walls seemed to breathe damp stone closing in, every drip of melting snow echoing like a clock counting down. Jackson lay on his back near the entrance, his breath shallow, bubbles of red frothing at his lips. Martinez gritted his teeth against the pain of his shoulder, refusing morphine until the others were stable. Cooper paced in tight circles, rifle clutched too hard, muttering under his breath about how the mission was already dead. Sarah knelt between them, her hands steady though her chest felt like it was splitting open. She packed Jackson's wound again, checked Martinez's pulse, recalculated the precious minutes left before their bodies gave out. But none of her training could soften the truth. Without evacuation, Jackson wouldn't see another dawn. Martinez might last longer, but infection was already creeping in. The SEALs knew it too. They didn't say it aloud, but their silence was heavier than the cave. Every man's eyes flicked to her when she moved, like they weren't sure anymore if she was a medic or something far more dangerous. Wilson crouched near the entrance, watching the valley through his optics. He hadn't spoken to her since the video. When he finally turned, his voice was low but sharp. "Tell me everything, Mitchell. No more half-truths." Her hands froze on the bandage. She met his stare, the weight of command burning in his eyes. For a moment she wanted to lie again, to stay wrapped in the fragile fiction of being just a doctor. But lies had already cost her too much. Bosnia still bled in her memory. "I was 24 when I joined Phantom," she said quietly. "We weren't supposed to exist. Deep black ops, zero oversight. My role was long-range elimination. I was good at it, too good." Cooper stopped packing, his mouth tight. Even Martinez, half-conscious, opened his eyes. Sarah continued, voice barely above a whisper. "We were sent to Bosnia to eliminate Dragovich. I had the shot, I missed. Or maybe I didn't miss, maybe I hesitated. Either way, he lived. My team didn't. They died screaming and I carried the weight home. I swore I'd never touch a rifle again. I swore I'd only save lives." The silence thickened. Wilson's jaw clenched, and now Sullivan's using you as bait. Her hands curled into fists. He knew Dragovich wouldn't be able to resist. He knew I was the one face Dragovich wanted to see again. Cooper spat on the stone floor. "So we're pawns in your unfinished business." Sarah's voice cracked. "No, you're soldiers in a mission you were never told the truth about, and I'm the one who has to finish what should have been finished years ago." Wilson leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "Then tell me this, are you still a doctor or are you Phantom Echo again?" Her chest tightened. She wanted to say doctor. She wanted to cling to the fragile identity she'd built from ashes, the one that didn't demand blood on her hands. But outside, Dragovich was moving his pieces, and every second of hesitation cost lives. "I don't know," she whispered. Wilson studied her, then nodded once. "Figure it out fast, because if you hesitate again, we all die here." The weight of his words sank like lead. Hours bled into one another. Snow thickened outside, muffling movement, but Sarah knew Dragovich's men were out there, circling, closing. She took turns on watch with Wilson and Cooper, her scope sweeping the ridgeline. Shadows flickered, muzzle flashes sparked and vanished. Each time she raised her rifle, her hands moved with terrifying familiarity. Phantom Echo was never truly gone. When dawn finally painted the peaks in pale fire, the radio crackled. A voice, distorted but unmistakable, filled the cave. "Mitchell." Her stomach clenched. "Dragovich." "You're alive, good. I wondered if the snow would take you before I could. I see you still carry your little toy." His Russian accent dripped with amusement. "Do you remember the villa? Do you remember their screams? I do, every night. And I have wondered for years why you spared me. Was it mercy or weakness?" Sarah's hands shook. She gripped the radio so tightly it hurt. "You were supposed to be dead." Dragovich laughed, cold and deep. "Supposed to be, but fate is cruel, isn't it? and here we are again. Only this time I do not plan to miss." Wilson ripped the radio from her hand, cutting transmission. His face was stone. "He's baiting you." She stared at the floor, her chest heaving. But in her bones she knew the truth. Dragovich didn't want Chen. He didn't want uranium, not really. He wanted her. This was personal, and Sullivan had known. Later, when the others tried to rest, Sarah slipped deeper into the cave, away from the glow of their headlamps. She pulled her rifle across her knees, the barrel cold, the scope familiar. She closed her eyes and breathed. She remembered her father's voice. Accuracy is a gift, but wisdom is knowing when to use it. What was wisdom now? Jackson dying behind her, Martinez bleeding out, Cooper watching her like she was a stranger, Wilson holding a team together with sheer will. Was wisdom staying the doctor, or finally embracing the ghost she had tried so hard to bury? Her eyes stung. She pressed her palms against them until stars bloomed in the dark. Bosnia whispered in the silence. The villa, the missed shot, the weight of failure. And then she heard movement. She snapped her scope up, sweeping the cave mouth. Shadows, figures moving with deliberate silence. She flicked her safety off, breath steady. The first fighter stepped into view. She squeezed, crack, he fell, another surged forward, crack, another down. Shouts rose outside, boots pounding on snow. The ambush had come. "Contact!" Wilson roared, dragging the others to cover. Cooper opened fire, his shots echoing in tight bursts. The cave became thunder, muzzle flashes lighting the walls. Sarah fell into rhythm. Shoot, cycle, aim, breathe. Each target dropped clean. Each shot whispered that phantom echo had never truly died. But for everyone she killed, more pressed forward. Grenades clattered against the stone, smoke filling the air, choking. Jackson coughed, blood spraying. Martinez groaned. The cave was becoming a tomb. Wilson shouted over the chaos. "We can't hold. We move or we're buried." Sarah's mind raced. She saw the map in her head, the terrain, the ridges. She remembered the alternate routes she'd traced days ago, the ones no one else had noticed. A narrow pass to the west, hidden by overhangs. A sniper's dream or an escape route. She grabbed Wilson's arm. "West Pass, it's our only chance. I can cover the retreat." He stared at her, alone. Her jaw tightened. "I've been alone in worse." He hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." The team scrambled, dragging the wounded toward the west. Sarah stayed behind, rifle braced, eyes locked on the cave mouth. Each breath was calm, each squeeze of the trigger precise. The enemy fell, one after another, but she didn't move. Not yet. Only when Wilson's voice cracked over comms, "We're clear," did she rise, sling her rifle, and sprint into the snow. Bullets chased her, slicing the air. She dove behind a ridge, heart hammering, lungs burning. The others were ahead, disappearing into the white. She glanced back once. The cave mouth was dark now, crawling with enemy silhouettes, and among them she saw him. Dragovich, standing tall, mask off, his scarred face turned toward her, his eyes locked on hers through the storm. He raised a hand in mock salute. Her stomach dropped. Bosnia lived again. She turned and ran. How far could they carry the wounded before the mountain claimed them? Every step westward bled strength from the team. Snow fell in relentless sheets, blinding, soaking through uniforms, turning their boots to lead. Cooper half-carried Jackson, whose breaths came in rattling gasps, blood seeping through his bandages. Martinez stumbled beside them, teeth clenched against the pain in his shoulder. Wilson led at the front, compass steady, eyes sharp, but even he knew the truth, they were moving too slow. Sarah stayed in the middle, her rifle slung but ready, her eyes scanning ridges above them. She could feel Dragovich's presence in the storm, like a predator circling unseen. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. Every break in the snowline seemed to watch them. Cooper cursed as Jackson sagged against him. "He's not gonna make it. We're dragging a corpse." Sarah shot him a glare sharp enough to cut through the storm. "He's alive. Until he isn't, you don't talk like that." Cooper met her eyes, defiance flashing, but something in her voice stilled him. He adjusted his grip, muttering under his breath, but he kept moving. Wilson called a halt near a cluster of rocks that offered partial cover. The team collapsed into the snow, chests heaving. Sarah immediately dropped to her knees beside Jackson. She peeled back the dressing, blood everywhere. The cold slowed the bleeding, but his lung was collapsing. She dug into her kit, hands trembling with urgency. Chest tube, needle, tape. She moved with speed, with certainty. Cooper hovered, pale and restless. "You really think you can save him out here?" She didn't look up. "If I don't, he's dead in minutes." Wilson crouched beside her, watching as she pushed the needle into Jackson's chest, air hissing out in a wet gasp. Jackson convulsed, then sucked in a fuller breath. Color returned faintly to his face. Wilson let out a slow exhale. "You just bought him time," he said quietly. She pressed the dressing down, securing it tight. Her voice cracked. "Time is all I ever buy." For a moment the storm hushed around them. Even Cooper said nothing, just staring at her with something almost like respect. But the quiet broke with the crack of a rifle. Snow puffed inches from Martinez's head. The team dropped instantly, weapons raised. "Sniper," Wilson barked. Sarah's heart slammed. She knew that sound, that distance. She yanked her scope to her eye, scanning. Through the snow she found it, a figure prone on the ridge, scope glinting. Not Dragovich, but one of his men. She steadied her breath, finger curling. Crack. The enemy slumped forward, rifle slipping from lifeless hands. Wilson's gaze flicked to her. No words, just acknowledgement. But she wasn't done. She swept the ridge again, spotting movement farther west, shadows stalking, converging. She felt it deep in her bones. Dragovich wasn't trying to kill them quickly. He was hunting them, bleeding them, forcing them to waste time, to spend energy, to choose between speed and survival. Her stomach knotted. Bosnia again, the same playbook. He wanted her desperate, he wanted her broken. They moved again westward, every man tense. The snow thinned as the sun struggled to pierce through the storm. For a brief moment the valley opened and Sarah saw it. A narrow pass between two ridges, almost invisible, cloaked in ice. She stopped short. "This way," she said. Wilson frowned. "That's not on the map." "Exactly. That's why they won't expect us there." Cooper scowled. "Or it's why they'll funnel us into it and bury us alive." Sarah's jaw tightened. "If Dragovich wanted us dead already, we'd be dead. He's playing for something else. If we keep on the main valley, we'll walk right into his net. This pass buys us time." Wilson studied her, then the terrain. He made the call. "We take it." The pass was brutal. Narrow, steep, ice-coated. They moved single file, every step a battle against gravity and exhaustion. Cooper slipped twice, carrying Jackson, nearly tumbling into the ravine. Sarah grabbed him both times, hauling him back with a strength that surprised him. The second time their eyes met, his full of shock, her steady, determined. He said nothing after that. Halfway through the pass, the storm cleared just enough for her to see the horizon. She raised her scope instinctively and froze. On the far ridge, Dragovich stood. Not hiding, not cloaked, standing tall, watching them. His coat billowed in the wind, his scar stark against pale skin. And though the distance was impossible, she swore he was smiling. Her breath caught. Her finger twitched against the trigger. She could try. She could take the shot. One clean squeeze, end it. But she didn't, because she knew him. If he was standing in the open, it was by design, a distraction, a dare. And her men were bleeding, crawling, barely clinging to survival. She lowered the scope, fury burning in her chest. By nightfall, they reached a plateau, flat ground, sheltered by rock outcroppings. Wilson ordered a halt. Fires were forbidden, but they huddled together for warmth, exhaustion etched into every face. Sarah checked Martinez again, then Jackson. Both clung to life by threads. Wilson sat across from her, his rifle across his knees. He studied her in the dim glow of starlight. "He's not after Chen anymore," he said. "He's after you." She swallowed hard. He's been after me for years. Wilson leaned forward, his voice low. Then we use it. If you're the bait, fine, but we decide where the trap closes. Sarah's chest tightened. The thought of deliberately drawing Dragovich closer turned her blood cold. But part of her, the part that had never stopped being Phantom Echo, understood. Later, when the others dozed in fitful sleep, Sarah sat apart, her rifle across her lap. She stared at the stars, cold and merciless above. She thought of her father's words again. Wisdom is knowing when to use it. She whispered to the night, to herself, to Bosnia, to the ghosts she carried. Maybe it's time. And somewhere beyond the ridge, Dragovich listened to the same wind. He knew. The hunt was no longer one-sided. How many times could a man outrun death before it stopped giving chase and started dragging him by the throat? The question hung heavy in the frozen air as dawn crept pale over the plateau. The seals stirred, eyes hollow from a night without real sleep. Martinez shivered under his blood-soaked bandage. Jackson lay still, his breath shallow, every exhale sounding like surrender. Sarah crouched beside them, her hands steady though her chest ached with each pulse. She changed dressings, checked vitals, whispered words they might never remember. A medic's rituals, fragile defenses against inevitability. She had promised herself once that medicine was her penance, that every life she patched together was repayment for those she had lost. But watching Jackson's face slacken, watching Martinez bite down on a rag to keep from crying out, she felt the cruel truth. Sometimes even medicine was only a pause button. Wilson's voice cut through the silence. We can't keep running. The men looked up. His tone was calm but unyielding. He scanned their faces, then settled on Sarah. Dragovich knows these mountains better than we do. He's bleeding us. If we stay on the defensive, we're dead by nightfall. Cooper bristled, jaw clenched. So what, we march straight into his arms? That's suicide. Wilson shook his head. Not if we choose the ground. He tapped the map spread across his knee. There's a choke point 3 clicks west. 2 ridgelines funnel into a narrow basin. 1 entrance, 1 exit. If we set it right, we can force him to come to us. Martinez coughed, voice raw. Ambush the ambusher. Wilson's eyes lifted to Sarah. He's after you, we use that. The words hit her like a blow. She had always known. From the first shot in the mountains, from the moment his voice hissed over the radio, she knew she wasn't just a target. She was the prize. Dragovich didn't care about Chen anymore, not compared to the chance to finish what Bosnia had left unfinished. Her throat tightened. You're asking me to draw him in to be bait. Wilson's gaze didn't waver. I'm asking you to decide what you are, doctor or sniper, because if you stay in between, we all die. The cave seemed to shrink around her. She wanted to say doctor. She wanted to cling to that fragile identity, the one that made her feel human again. But the rifle across her knees said otherwise. The memories in her chest said otherwise. Bosnia said otherwise. She lowered her eyes. If we do this, there's no going back. Wilson's reply was sharp, final. There's no going back already. The decision wasn't hers alone anymore. It belonged to all of them. They moved out at first light, every step a war against exhaustion. The basin lay west, a bowl-shaped hollow hidden by sheer rock walls. Sarah studied it through her scope as they arrived, her sniper's mind calculating without permission. Elevation points, kill zones, blind corners. For a moment she felt like she had never left Bosnia, never left Phantom. The math of death flowed back too easily. Wilson assigned positions. Thompson and Cooper rigged claymores along the ridge path. Martinez, too weak to fight, was tucked behind cover with Jackson, his pistol clutched like a child holding a toy. Wilson himself chose the basin's throat, where he could control the choke. And Sarah took the high ground. She lay prone on a ridge overlooking the entrance, the M24 steady against her shoulder. Through the glass, the world shrank into a tunnel of focus. Every detail sharpened, snowflakes drifting, rocks jagged as teeth, shadows long and thin. Her breath slowed, her pulse steadied. Phantom echoes slid into place like she had never left. But inside, her chest twisted, because lying here again, waiting, she remembered the villa. She remembered the black Mercedes, the man stepping out, her finger tightening and the hesitation that had damned them all. She closed her eyes, forced the memory back. This time would be different. Hours crawled by. Snow thickened. The men waited in silence, each trapped in his own thoughts. Cooper sat beside Martinez, checking his weapon more than necessary. At one point, he glanced up at Sarah, his voice low. "Never thought I'd trust a medic to save my life with a rifle." She didn't look away from her scope. "Never thought I'd have to." He gave a dry, humorless laugh. "Guess war doesn't care what we thought." The radio crackled then, dragging them all to attention. A voice slithered through, familiar, taunting. "Mitchell, I see you." Sarah's stomach clenched. She swept her scope across the valley. Nothing, only snow, only silence. Dragovich's voice purred. "You hide well, but you forget I know your rhythms. I know how long you can lie still before your finger shakes. I know how you breathe before you fire. You are mine, Mitchell, always were." Wilson gestured for silence, hand signals snapping sharp. But Sarah's hands tightened on the rifle. Dragovich wasn't guessing. He was close, too close. Then movement, shadows emerging from the pass. Figures disciplined, coordinated. 10, 15, more. Their rifles moved as one, sweeping, covering, professionals, not rushing, not careless, advancing like they already knew the trap was there. Wilson's voice was calm in the comms. "Hold, hold." Sarah's crosshairs traced over one helmet, then another. Her finger tightened, but Wilson's voice cut sharp. "Not yet." The enemy moved deeper, funneling into the basin. Claymores waited, rifles aimed. Sarah's breath froze in her chest. And then a single figure stepped forward. Tall, broad, no mask, scar catching the light. Dragovich. Her heart lurched. Through her scope, his face filled the glass, older but unchanged. The same eyes, the same cruel curl of his mouth, the same man she had failed to kill. This was the moment, Bosnia reborn, the second chance fate had stolen. Her finger trembled against the trigger. Now Wilson hissed. The basin erupted. Claymores detonated in thunderous blasts. Snow and bodies flew into the air. The SEALs unleashed hell, rifles hammering, bullets slicing through the storm. Sarah fired, crack, one down, crack, another. The rifle kicked like it had been waiting years. But Dragovich, he didn't flinch. He strode through chaos like it belonged to him, barking orders, his voice carrying even over gunfire. Sarah locked on, her scope steady, her breath held. This time she wouldn't miss. And then at the edge of her sight, Jackson coughed blood, convulsing. Martinez shouted for her. Her scope wavered. Bosnia clawed at her chest. One shot, one failure, one team dead. Her heart screamed to pull the trigger. Her oath screamed to save her men. The rifle cracked, but not hers. A bullet slammed into the ridge inches from her head, spraying stone shards across her face. She ducked instinctively, eyes burning. Another sniper, Dragovich's counter. The battlefield blurred. Her decision was still unmade. How do you aim when your heart is being torn in two directions at once? Sarah pressed her cheek into the cold stock of the M24, eyes locked through the scope, crosshairs centered on Dragovich. He moved through the storm like a general carved from ice, bullets whipping past him, claymore smoke billowing at his back. Every instinct screamed, "This is it. This is the moment Bosnia denied you." One squeeze, one breath, one shot. But then came the crack of another rifle, close, sharp, lethal. The rock near her head exploded into shards. Her face stung. Her scope jolted. Another sniper. She rolled, heart hammering, eyes sweeping the ridge opposite. A shadow flickered in the snow, prone, hidden. But she felt it more than she saw it, the calm rhythm of someone trained to kill from distance. He was watching her the same way she was watching Dragovich. Wilson's voice snapped through comms, sharp and urgent. "We're taking heavy fire. Mitchell, what's your status? Engaged, she hissed, shifting into position. Her scope swept, hunting. A faint glint betrayed the enemy sniper's position. She exhaled, finger tightening. Crack. Snow puffed near his rifle, but he rolled, alive, sliding to new cover. Damn it, she whispered. Below the basin was a slaughterhouse. The SEALs poured fire into Dragovich's men, but they came relentless, disciplined. Martinez fired with his uninjured arm, face pale, sweat freezing on his brow. Cooper cursed as his rifle jammed, shoving in a fresh mag with shaking hands. Wilson stood exposed in the choke, barking orders, his calm voice pulling the team together even as bullets tore the air around him. Sarah adjusted, tracked the counter-sniper again. Through her scope she caught a glimpse, cheekbone, eye calm and steady. A professional, she fired. He fired back. Rock shattered. The duel narrowed the world to two rifles, two breaths, two souls determined to erase the other. But then Dragovich's voice cut through the storm. Not through comms, not over radio, carried by his lungs, his throat, his fury. Mitchell! The name slammed into her like a blade. She froze. Through her scope, she saw him standing in the open, rifle loose in his hands, as if daring her. His voice boomed over the battlefield. You think I do not remember. The villa, the shot you missed, the screams. Your hesitation killed them, not me. Her pulse spiked. Bosnia flooded back, the black Mercedes, the cries of her dying team, the fire. She blinked, tried to force it away, but his voice was a poison that seeped into her bones. You live as a doctor now, yes, saving lives, but you cannot save them all, not Jackson, not Martinez. You will fail again, Mitchell. That is who you are. Shut up, she hissed, though no one heard. The counter-sniper fired again, grazing the ridge beside her. She snapped back, adjusted, fired. This time the figure jerked, a cry ripped by the wind. Hit but not dead, still alive. Wilson's voice roared through comms. Mitchell, we need that sniper down or we're finished. Her chest clenched. She shifted focus, ignoring Dragovich, locking back onto the enemy sniper. Crack. The figure slumped, finally still. Relief surged, but it came too late. Because when she turned her scope back, Dragovich was gone. Contact lost, she whispered, fury boiling in her veins. Below, the fight raged. Dragovich's men pressed harder, pinning the SEALs. Cooper dragged Martinez behind cover, bullets snapping inches from his head. Wilson emptied his last magazine, grabbed a fallen enemy rifle, kept firing. Jackson lay still now, breath stilled forever, his chest unmoving. Sarah's heart cracked. She wanted to scream, to grieve, but there was no time. She shifted her scope, clearing targets, carving holes for her team to breathe. Each shot was precise, mechanical, but each shot also tore at her. She wasn't a doctor right now. She wasn't saving. She was killing, and God help her, part of her felt alive again. Wilson's voice strained through static. We can't hold much longer. Sarah swept the battlefield, desperate. Then she saw him again, Dragovich, moving through smoke, too calm, too composed, dragging someone with him. Her stomach dropped. A thin, frail figure bound, gagged. Dr. Chen. Her crosshairs centered on Dragovich's head. One breath, one squeeze. But Chen was in front of him, shielded, every move deliberate. Dragovich knew. He wanted her to shoot, to risk the hostage, to live with another failure. Her finger trembled. Damn you, she whispered. He raised his head, eyes locking with hers across the battlefield. And then, through the chaos, he smiled. Gunfire tore the snow apart. Wilson's shout snapped her back. Mitchell, we need a decision. And in that moment, Sarah's world split again. Phantom echo, finger on the trigger, vengeance within reach. Dr. Mitchell, medic, bound to protect life. Both screamed inside her. Both demanded obedience. She closed her eyes for half a heartbeat, then opened them. And chose. Her rifle cracked, echoing like judgment through the basin. Dragovich jerked, not dead, not yet, but the bullet ripped across his shoulder, spinning him, dropping Chen to the snow. The scientist scrambled free as SEAL fire covered him. Dragovich disappeared into smoke, roaring her name like a curse. Mitchell! The battlefield fell into a strange hush. His men faltered, momentarily leaderless. Wilson seized the opening. Push, push. The SEALs surged, dragging Chen toward cover, firing with renewed desperation. Sarah provided overwatch, every shot carving a path. They reached the scientist, pulled him into the fold. For a moment, hope flickered. But Dragovich's laugh rolled through the storm, broken but unbowed. You still hesitate. You wound, but you cannot kill. You will always fail at the moment that matters most. His voice slithered away into silence, swallowed by snow and smoke. The SEALs regrouped in the basin, battered, bloody, but alive. Jackson lay dead. Martinez clung to consciousness. Cooper's face was hard, pale, eyes rimmed with something like fear and respect for Sarah. Wilson looked at her last, his expression unreadable. "You had him," he said quietly. Her hands shook as she lowered the rifle. "I had Chen too." Wilson studied her, then gave a slow nod. Not approval, not condemnation, just truth. The wind howled across the basin, carrying Dragovich's absence like a promise. He wasn't finished. Not yet. Sarah sat in the snow, chest heaving, rifle heavy in her hands. Bosnia still lived, but so did she, and so did Dragovich. The final reckoning had only just begun. What did it mean to survive when not everyone came back? The basin was silent now, littered with shell casings, spent magazines, and bodies half buried in snow. The wind carried the smell of gunpowder and iron, a bitter perfume of violence that clung to their lungs. Jackson's body lay still under a tarp Cooper had pulled over him. No flag, no ceremony, just the cold earth in the hands of men who had no time to mourn. Martinez dozed in shallow, fevered sleep, his wound bound tight, his breath rattling. Dr. Chen sat hunched, shivering, eyes darting like a man who had lived too long in cages. And Sarah sat apart from them, her rifle across her lap, her gloves stained red with blood that wasn't all hers. She stared at her hands and thought of the oath she'd once sworn. First, do no harm. But the snow around her told another story. She had done harm, again and again, because sometimes the only way to save was to destroy. Wilson approached quietly, lowering himself beside her. For a long moment he said nothing, just watching the storm. Then softly, "Jackson was a good man." Her throat ached. "I should have done more." "You kept him alive longer than anyone else could have." Wilson's voice was low, steady. "You gave him a chance. Sometimes that's all we can do." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to cling to that small mercy. But Dragovich's voice still echoed in her skull. "You will always fail at the moment that matters most." She looked at Wilson, her eyes hard. "He's not finished. He won't stop. Not until—" her voice trailed off. "Not until what?" She clenched her jaw. "Not until he has me." Wilson studied her. For a moment his command mask slipped and she saw the man beneath, tired, determined, trusting her more than he should. "Then we end it here, tonight." The decision was made without ceremony. They would not run. They would not crawl further into the mountains. They would stand, with what little strength they had left, and draw Dragovich in for the last time. As night fell, the snow slowed, stars piercing through thin cloud. The basin became an arena, silent and waiting. The SEALs set their last defenses, their last rounds chambered. Cooper took up position near Martinez, his jaw tight with unspoken grief. Wilson checked each man, then settled by the choke point, rifle steady. And Sarah climbed the ridge alone. The M24 fit into her hands as though it had been waiting for this night, for this moment. She lay prone, sighting into the darkness, her breath slow, her pulse steady. She thought of her father, of his words. Accuracy is a gift. Wisdom is knowing when to use it. Tonight, both would be tested. The first sign came in whispers. A crunch of snow, a flicker of shadow, then another. Dragovich's men, advancing slow, careful, disciplined. Not many this time. Enough to probe, enough to bleed, enough to distract. Sarah let them pass. Her scope swept further. She knew he was there, somewhere, watching, waiting. And then her chest clenched. On the far ridge, prone, patient, scope glinting in the starlight, Dragovich. He was not hiding, he was waiting for her. Their eyes met through glass and distance, two ghosts across a gulf of years. She remembered Bosnia, the villa, the hesitation, the cost. Not tonight. She exhaled, finger tightening. But before she could fire, his voice came, not on radio, not shouted, but through some cruel alchemy of memory and the way his lips shaped her name in the dark. Mitchell. Her heart slammed, her finger froze. He smiled through the scope, calm, patient, certain. Do it, he whispered, though she could not hear him. Fail again. Time slowed. She saw two paths. One, fire, kill him, end the ghost. The other, hold, hesitate, let the past rule her again. But then she thought of Jackson, of Martinez, of Wilson, of every life in her hands tonight, and for the first time the choice felt clear. She shifted her aim not at Dragovich's head but lower, his rifle, his scope, the one thing that made him untouchable. Crack. Metal shattered, sparks flaring. His weapon broke in his hands, his eyes widened, fury boiling. Before he could move, she fired again. His shoulder snapped back, blood spraying, the same wound she had given him in Bosnia, a circle completed. Dragovich roared, rising, charging down the ridge like a wounded beast. He drew a sidearm, firing wildly, bullets cracking into the snow near her. But Sarah was calm now. No ghosts, no hesitation, only clarity. She rose to one knee, exhaled, and whispered to the night, I am not Echo, I am Sarah Mitchell, and this ends with me. Her final shot split the night. Dragovich collapsed, blood soaking the snow, his voice breaking on her name one last time before silence claimed him. The battlefield hushed. His men faltered, then broke, vanishing into the storm without their leader. Wilson's voice crackled in her ear, status. She lowered the rifle, her hands steady for the first time in years. Target neutralized. The SEALs regrouped in the basin, battered, bloodied, but alive. They carried Jackson's body with quiet reverence. Martinez leaned on Cooper, who no longer looked at Sarah with suspicion, but with something like awe. Wilson met her eyes, nodding once, not as commander to subordinate, but as soldier to soldier, equal. As dawn broke over the mountains, Sarah sat apart, rifle across her knees, staring at the rising sun. She thought of her father, of Bosnia, of the ghosts that had chased her for years. She thought of the oath she had broken and the lives she had saved. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It doesn't argue. It doesn't defend. Sometimes dignity simply acts. And in the silence of that mountain, with snow falling soft as forgiveness, Sarah Mitchell, doctor, sniper, survivor, finally laid her ghosts to rest.